lifelong Oakland A's fan, Kevin KP Peters, comes on the show and has a bone to pick with yours truly today on Locked On A's.
You are Locked On A's, your daily podcast on the Athletics, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On A's, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. I am your host, Booney. Thank you for making Locked On A's your first listen of the day. I'm from the Bay Area, and I've been a diehard A's fan since 1981. I'm here to bring you a real fan's take, covering everything from Oakland to Sacramento, and yes, to Las Vegas. This is the place for A's fans to get the latest game breakdowns, team news, and more. This is where the passion of the fans take center stage. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. And please hit that subscribe button wherever you are following the show. In the world of sports, few stories have been as polarizing, as exhausting, or as emotionally charged as the Oakland A's impending relocation to Las Vegas. What began as whispers of a potential move has now evolved into a full-blown saga filled with political maneuvering, financial wrangling, and a fan base left grappling with heartbreak and betrayal. To call this story politicized would be an understatement. To call it divisive would barely scratch the surface. But for all the passion surrounding this saga, one thing has been notably absent: genuine, pure debate. Most conversations about the A's move have been one-sided, echo chambers of outrage or resignation. That is, until today. Enter Kevin Peters, a lifelong A's fan and East Bay native who has lived and breathed green and gold for as long as he can remember. Kevin is no casual observer. He's been deeply entrenched in A's fandom for years, following every twist and turn of this story with a critical eye. And then there's me, a fellow A's fan who sees this issue from an entirely different perspective. Someone that feels that the truth isn't what we think it is. What happens when two people with starkly contrasting opinions sit down to discuss one of the most contentious topics in all of sports? Sparks fly. In this two-part series, KP and I dive head first into the debate over the A's relocation to Las Vegas, leaving no stone unturned. We don't hold back. We question everything: the motives of ownership, the role of local government, the responsibility of fans, and even the very nature of what it means to be loyal to a team. At times, our conversation gets heated. How could it not? This is more than just baseball. It's about identity, community, and the complicated relationship between a sports franchise and the city it calls home. But here's the thing. This isn't about who's right or wrong. It's about perspective. It's about understanding how two people can look at the same set of facts and come away with entirely different conclusions. It's about finding common ground, or at least trying to, in a debate that has torn apart an entire fan base. So buckle up, whether you are an A's fan mourning the loss of your team or an outsider trying to make sense of it all. This conversation promises to be raw, unfiltered, and deeply human. Part one of the Great Divide. What is it you have an issue with?
I think it's just the general divisiveness of the A's fan base right now, which is understandable considering they're moving from an Oakland environment to a Sacramento environment and on their way to a Vegas environment. Naturally, it feels as if the fan base is kind of split up in several ways. And I've and in some of the videos that you've done, you've mentioned, hey, and I've heard this other places as well. Like, oh, I hope I piss off Oakland A's fans, or Oakland A's fans are naysayers, or they're negative, or they're this, or they're that, or they're this, or they're that. And I think the narrative already was that like the relocation in the first place is an A's fan's fault. That narrative, I kind of just take that a little bit personal, because I don't think it's correct. And then we continue to talk about how A's fans of Oakland A's fans are incorrect about what is happening. Now, I'm not really tapped into what all Oakland A's fans are saying. It's hard to use one voice to embody everybody, but I have a couple different resources that I've chimed into and heard from, and it feels as though the fan base that has a platform here it covers the relocation in the same way that you do, right? With a level of I guess overall generality of objectivity, right? Leveraging the Las Vegas news and sentiment, also leveraging what we know from historical data points about John Fisher and how he chooses to go about his business. And so, I'll start with one particular video. You were saying everything that we knew was a lie. I got through the first part of the video, and you made some excellent points. It was a good video. It was a good watch. But I felt like while a lot of the points that were shared, none of them actually changed the story in any way, shape, or form. For instance, when Haas sold, I think it was Shot, the new ownership group, the team, he had sold it. It was supposed to be, hey, he sold this team for cheap on the dollar, gave it to him because he wanted to keep them in Oakland. When in reality, he sold them the team at price plus inflation for the payroll. But to me, that doesn't really change the narrative. That's a good business deal. That's what you should pay, especially for pennies on the dollar relative to what a franchise costs today, and especially at that time. So to me, it's not really about that. But hoping, and Walter Haas, rest in peace, was sick at the time, so I know that the family wanted out of the business. But I think in the more recent video too, then it becomes, oh yeah, well, it's kind of difficult because if A's fans have brought up any speculation about the move, right? So historically,
we just had an earthquake. Sorry.
Oh boy. Historically, it's been, can Fisher pay for this? Will Fisher pay for this? It's been, is this a good idea? Is this lucrative? All of these points come into favor with an Oakland fan in particular and no one else, because the team was here and is here. And if you've seen it and you've been here, you know that for all the reasons that they're saying that they could have moved, for all the effort that they're implying now that we love to see, it can still be painful because we're noticing that all these things could have been done here, right? They're going to put the A's on forever welfare, forever revenue sharing. But a lot of the reason they wanted to leave was they wanted them off of revenue sharing, right? So they could have actually, if it meant anything, they could have put them on an incentivized bubble, just like they've done now, where you have to spend this amount of money before you get any revenue sharing. They took the revenue sharing away and hurt the team. And then they're like, well, we'll give it back to you if you relocate to the city. So I think the perspective here is you could have done that here, right? The other perspective here locally then too is that okay, well, you picked Howard Terminal, and Howard Terminal was already a site that had been deemed unfit, and your proposal was a $10 billion stadium, which feels unrealistic. And so it feels like you gave the city unattainable goals.
It was $10 billion with the offsite infrastructure. It was 12 billion actually.
12 billion, 100%.
With the offsite, but that doesn't include just the stadium. That also includes the offsite infrastructure.
100%. But the ancillary development was a lot of the reason why they wanted to do that site. And so
Correct.
the other challenge here then is, hey, if it's really pertinent that you get a stadium done, then maybe you start with that stadium and then you do the ancillary development as you go, right? Because if that was the case, Oakland got approval for all of those things, and you could have done it before. Now, I do recognize that all these things are old. I'm not saying I'm not holding on to that hat where it's like, oh, they're staying, or maybe they'll stay. That's not what I'm doing. But what I'm trying to do is illustrate the way the conversation and where it's come from and what the perspective has been here, where it's like, oh, well, like Oakland, they need to shut up, and like that doesn't track or anything like that. What I'm trying to say is like, with the evidence that we're seeing in the move, there are points that it's like that prove that, hey, they could have stayed here if they wanted to. It looks to the visible eye that you didn't really want to be here, so you wanted to leave. And so like while people have accepted that as the truth, it's very frustrating to then be blamed by the ownership group, and then the rest of the fan base has been pretty nasty as well. And so when you're like, oh yeah, well, I hope this sticks in the Oakland A's fans' craw. They're pretty negative. I actually don't think that Oakland A's fans should be excited about the move. Like we've discussed in the past, like many of them have jumped ship. They're like done with baseball because of the I guess double narrative, because of the I don't know, just the way that this has been done. If the A's had said, I'll put it like this to you like this: if the A's had said, "Hey, we're moving, like we're done with our time here. It's been great, but this is what we're looking for," and MLB and Major League Baseball is partnering with us to do this, then this would be a way different conversation. I'm sure more A's fans would have been hurt, but support this move more. But what was done instead was a very cheap job at trying to stay here with the Rooted in Oakland campaign, a very insincere way to stay here, and then an insult of the people here. And even the final game had snipers on the roof at the college at Oracle at the Oakland Arena. Yeah. So like it just felt very disingenuous. It felt as if Oakland A's fans were typecasted. It felt like they were blamed for not filling the stadium. But the reality is, when you look at Vegas, a lot of the people that they have doing the groundwork, like bouncing up the excitement, are not locals. They're tourists, right? I just saw a recent video where they're talking to people from Utah and any tourist that doesn't know anything about the A's, the relocation site, just that they're getting a stadium and a new baseball team. And what I'm trying to say when I say that is that the casual fan needs more than just baseball. For the go-hards, the 6,000, 8,000 fans that show up regularly to the A stadium, like those are diehard baseball fans. And that's a pretty sizable group of your fan base. That's a diehard group. But for the rest of the fan base, it needs more than that, which is why you see Giants Stadium progress, Oracle on the other side of the bay. You need more than that. And the reality is, we give Fisher a lot of credit for someone who almost sabotaged his team for 20 odd years, right? When I say sabotage, you didn't invest in it, you know what I mean? And to that end, we already know, you put a bad product forward, you put bathrooms in the kitchen, no one's going to come to your restaurant. You know what I'm saying? So,
but they haven't put a bad product on from 2021 to 2024. I agree with your narrative as far as sabotage. Before that, they didn't put a bad product on the field.
Booney, it's not about bad product on the field. Bad product is the whole thing. Like I just said, only so few people care about baseball, and we see what that is. See what that's like. So like the diehards care about baseball. I'm one of those guys, and the 7,999 other people that are out there care about that. But baseball's in a different space than it was, which is why you see teams building stadium villages, which is why the ancillary department was a part of it, because they want something else that's going to draw your more casual fan. They understand that, and that logic is a part of the development in Vegas, right? It was supposed to be a part of the development here. What I'm saying in addition to that is that, like, outside of that, awful experience from the food to the parking and the traffic to the location. You can't hang out there. It's just not a family-friendly place, right? The A's particularly draw from East Bay, so we're talking about Pleasant Hill, going up north, going east, all these other places. And so, like, it became difficult. I asked my own dad, they're Giants fans, and he said he's just done with the A's because they refuse to invest in their own team, right? And so like I'm the A's fan in the family, but you say, hey, they put a good product out there. They did. They had really good teams, but they've had a history of 20 years of churning their quality players, so no one can become familiar with the team. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah, I see what you're
like
saying.
I think Forrest has done a great job in being. I think did a great job of fielding really quality and exceptional teams through any and all of that. But I think the problem is baseball. A lot of the reason why they wouldn't rank the A's to win the division or win second place is because it's a name brand sport. Star power drives the sport. And so like you can be good and not sexy. You know what I mean? And so like they put the Angels and the Rangers first, not because they were better, but because they had household names, because they had powerful names, right? And so I think there's something to that, in that you talk about baseball when they sell the sport on the TV. Sunday Night Baseball is going to feature this player in the Padres versus this player in the Red Sox. You get what I'm saying? So like there's the sexiness that you can sell it and that they're a good team. The A's operated in silence because there's nothing to sell there. And then the A's fans would get excited about certain players, and then they might get traded for more prospects. So punt that down the line to stay under the cap. So my whole point is that I think there's a real gripe for the Oakland fan. And as we kind of move forward, like I'm watching your videos, and then you had one video recently that was, hey, like, does Fisher have the money and can he pay for it? Yada, yada, yada. And so like, that's the conversation that Oakland A's fans might have been on a little bit before, because we've seen failed fights happen repeatedly. Right. And then we've seen this, regardless of whether he's going to pay for it or not and what help he's going to get, objectively, this has been a very unorthodox circumstance, right? How this has happened has been very strange. And that paired with the fact that he's never gotten it done before brings into question whether he can get it done. So we believe it's going to get done because Major League's behind him. And maybe Major League, if they stepped in the past with the blue panel ribbon, remember the blue ribbon panel that was supposed to help them get a stadium here? Maybe if they had interacted more favorably in the way that they have with this process, it could have gotten done here. But I think the whole purpose is that, like, for everything that they're doing to get away, they could have done that here. I think that Oakland A's fans essentially do have a gripe. They don't need to be happy about their team leaving, but it doesn't make them, the ones that choose to stay here, doesn't make them not A's fans. And like, there's still questions about John Fisher. He's being celebrated, but at the same time,
I don't think anyone's celebrating John Fisher, KP.
I feel like there's a counter. You know, he just made it to, like, what is it?
I saw that as far as within the owners and
100%. And then I see a lot of think pieces that are like, oh yeah, are we too hard on John Fisher and this, that, and the third, where it's like, yes, we understand that now that he is getting a stadium in Vegas, he's all of a sudden a hero in certain people's eyes. It's also still like, I think there are some things that are in question when it comes to his ownership and habits, you know, so.
I'm not disagreeing with you with a lot of you said. As far as celebration of John Fisher, I'm not on board with that. But let me tell you where I'm coming from and the reason I've taken some of the takes I have.
Sure.
First of all, I don't think there's been any video where I've said, hey, I want to piss off the A's fans. Okay. I've never said that. I understand my takes and where I'm coming from have that look, but I've never quote unquote said that. So when I started doing this, the first 5, 6, 7 episodes, you could go back, I was a big proponent of the narrative of everything against John Fisher, everything against MLB. Why didn't he sell to Reggie Jackson? Why did Schott and Hoffman do this when they were supposed to keep it in Oakland? When they made the commitment to keep it in Oakland to Haas? Everything I have seen with regard to documentaries, to media, to how Fisher is going to pay for the stadium was half a truth. After I decided to look deeper into it, there was a lot of things part of the story that got left out. So at the end of the day, as a fan, I felt manipulated. I felt that no one would tell the true story in order for me to make my own decision. The Reggie Jackson group that supposedly was supposed to buy the team, that's half a truth. When Hoffman and Schott owned the team, they hired Leo Wolf, okay, to find them a new stadium, basically. Contractually, they gave Wolf the option to buy the team. When that option, when Schott and Hoffman decided, hey, we're done with the team, Wolf said, okay, I want to buy. They gave him a 90-day window to buy the team. But this was already in his contract when he first took the original job. Wolf originally said, I will only buy the team. I will only buy out Hoffman. I want Schott to be my partner. Hoffman had a big issue with that. He said, no, I'm not doing that. I don't know what you guys are up to, so forth. So that did not happen. Wolf was not going to buy the team because he couldn't afford it on his own, which then led him to recruit John Fisher. Okay? John Fisher had the funds in order to buy the team. So the thought in the narrative we hear that MLB was in some sort of conspiracy to sell the team to Wolf is untrue. Reggie Jackson came way after Wolf was already in contract to buy the team. There was never any sort of conspiracy between MLB and Leo Wolf to buy the team. I thought that. I did an episode on that. Leo Wolf and Bud Selig, yes, were fraternity brothers. But they butted heads. They did not get along while Leo Wolf was the owner. Leo Wolf wanted to go to San Jose. He wanted San Jose bad. He has connections in San Jose, etc. And actually, Vegas was started by Hoffman and Schott. Wolf talked them out of it. Said you should go to San Jose. Obviously, with the territorial rights, that was stopped. Okay, so that's narrative one, which I felt like I was completely lied to about. Local media has said the story that there was some sort of cahoots between Bud Selig and Leo Wolf. I believed it. False. Leo Wolf was given the option to purchase the team when he was hired by Schott and Hoffman. Okay? That's number one. Secondly, attendance. Attendance has been an issue. They have drawn in the top 10 in attendance in Major League Baseball 5 times or 6 times in 57 years. There has been no team more successful than the A's who have not drawn 3 million fans. So the idea and thought from A's fans now is that if you pay for payroll, the fans will show up. That's not necessarily true. They didn't show up from 72 to 74. They showed up for 2 years, 3 years, when the A's spent money, okay, and they were world champs. So my question is, and that's fine, and if that's what you believe and that is your thought, I'm okay with that. But the attendance needs to be part of the story. It has not been. You need to include the attendance in part of your story. The only reason the A's are going to show up is if they spend money and the team wins at a high level. You got to also remember, during those years, Walter Haas lost money. He got crushed. He got killed. I don't think anybody cares. I don't think anybody cares really about if the owner makes money or loses money. That's fine. No problem. When the team went from Wolf to Fisher, there were efforts to build a new stadium. No one talks about how Manfred, all we hear is F Manfred this, F Manfred that, excuse my language. Manfred supported the A's since he took office up until 2021. He actually went publicly and criticized John Fisher and the A's for how they handled Laney College and the Peralta site. Libby Schaff came out publicly and said, me and Commissioner Manfred are friendly. We're going to get things done. Manfred turned when all of a sudden nothing was getting done. The bottom line is that Fisher and the A's didn't do a whole lot. And if the city really wanted to get things done, they could have. I have blamed attendance on a couple things. The economy with regard to Oakland, what Oakland is going through. Crime, that is a factor. Population is a huge factor with regard to Oakland. All those things come into play when you're talking about the A's moving. I did say, and I have said, that you're right. The A's never really wanted to stay in Oakland. I 100% agree with you. But I have also said that Oakland did not do everything in their power to keep the A's. Do you think the Raiders were treated the same way by the city of Oakland like the A's were? No, they bent over backwards for the Raiders. And last point, local media mainstream, were buddies talking to Mayor Sheng Tao like no tomorrow. She gets indicted. I haven't heard her name since. She is also part of the narrative. My point being during this whole thing, KP, and everything I have said has always covered both sides of the story. There are two sides to every single story. And in order for a viewer or a listener to make an educated decision, we must present both sides. And I was victim to that because I trusted and I listened and I thought what they said was 100% truth. It was not. And that's where my criticism lies. Today's episode is brought to you in part by Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they are packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no shells variety. It's the perfect grab and go snack for busy days, whether I'm snacking at my desk, on a road trip, or just a quick protein boost. They are always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. The fact that Wonderful Pistachios is a complete protein providing all 9 essential amino acids. How these little green wonders pack a protein punch. No shells, Wonderful Pistachios for that grab and go case. The satisfying crack of opening each shell, it's like snack meditation. Whether you are running between meetings or dropping off the kids, Wonderful Pistachios are the snack that works as hard as you do. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. The criticism is that John Fisher has to liquidate assets in order to pay for it, which would cost him probably another $500 million. That's not true. Let's say Vegas doesn't happen for any particular reason. It may not. Who knows? There's no evidence that says it will not. We're just simply speculating. But the idea and thought that one of the arguments is that it will not happen is because John Fisher has to liquidate assets, causing a capital gain tax in order to pay for it, is false. It is half story after half story after half story. And while you're listening to just parts of it, what's the big deal of Haas selling it? That's just a little part of it. Sure, you're right. But when you put it all together, it's like, damn. Is anybody going to give me the full truth as a listener and let me make the decision on my own? And that's my point.
That was nice, and I appreciate that side of the story, but like a lot of that feels and sounds like the rhetoric that an outsider would push on Oakland, because I find that there's a lot of holes in what you just shared. You're right, and let me explain. I'm gonna try and go more in chronological order. In that in the 70s, I can't really speak for the 70s. I really just wasn't here. I don't know enough about it. But what I will say is that they moved here in 68, and the triple series 72, 73, 74 team, you're still kind of getting acclimated to a new environment.
All I'm saying about the 70s is there's a pattern that creates pattern.
Hold on, I'm gonna get to it.
Go ahead.
And that pattern does persist because after that team, they couldn't keep those guys together because ownership would not pay for them. And does that sound familiar? Yes, it does. So you have a three-peat, and then they go into the cellar for a little while. And the next series of good teams is this 80 through like 91, 92 team. And
80 and then 80 till they only had a couple good years, and then they had
a couple years where they weren't in the championship or in the divisional round, but they were pretty good. So that's why I say 88 to 92. This is when Jose Canseco's drafted and things start to look up.
That was their glory, yeah.
Right. So these years are good attendance. They had good ownership in those years. Yes, we recognize it. That's when they're notably in the top 10. Great. But then after that year, Walter gets sick and he has to sell the team. So, like, yes, that may have been a part of Lou Wolf's contract to buy the team.
Later.
But it did go, well, it's like 92. It's like 92, 93 at this point. Because
96 he sold, I believe.
But they're shopping the team because it was an open sale, and Reggie Jackson did bid. He bid on the team, and he wasn't the only ownership group that put a bid out, and the bid was more than this part is fact. Whatever was with the contract, I don't know, but the bid was for more than the competitor at the time, the incumbent.
This is when Schott and Hoffman sold, not when Haas sold.
Right. This is earlier because this is when Tony La Russa leaves the team and they sell off all the players. And
Jackson didn't make his bid though when Schott and Hoffman. He made it when Schott and Hoffman was selling.
Right. Jackson was still playing at this point, right? But this is how Lou Wolf and them got the team. But like they sell off everybody. So now you're back into the 80s mode where there's nobody and the team's doing bad. So now you get to the early 99, 2000. You get to the Billy Bean stage era, right? This is the beginning of that. Built some really crazy teams in this early times, but I think it's Schott and Lou Wolf own the team at this stage.
No, during that stage, no, it was all that was just Lou Wolf got hired in 2003.
Who owns it? Schott
and Hoffman.
Schott and Hoffman. That's right. Okay. So they're owning the team. But they did cut payroll. They didn't cut payroll. They did cut payroll. The payroll is pretty low. It's why they then had to sell off some of the Billy Bean teams as well. And we didn't have anybody. We couldn't keep our stars, yada, 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 so on and so forth. We know the narrative, okay? But then in 05, 06, that's when Lou Wolf comes along.
2003 to be exact. Okay. But yeah.
And now there's two buyer groups. There's two buyer groups at this time that both do submit higher bids than Lou Wolf.
That's not true. Reggie Jackson came after. But you got to remember, it was Lou Wolf's option. It was Lou Wolf's option to purchase.
Well, he was buying his partner out of ownership. His partner didn't want to be a part of it because
he was not. They both sold out. They both sold. Both Hoffman and Schott sold to Wolf. Wolf's original plan was to buy out Hoffman. and be partners with Schott. Hoffman wasn't having that. So both of them decided to sell. Okay. At that point, Wolf didn't have the money. Okay. He had 90 days to exercise his option. He did. That's when he found Fisher. Fisher was the majority owner, if you remember. He had the money.
Fisher was brought in. Fisher was brought in. Yeah.
Correct. He was brought in. Absolutely.
Because of
when they were already in contract to purchase the home at a decided price, months later, weeks later, whatever it may have been, when the process was already going on, Reggie Jackson then came in, but they were already in contract. They already were in the process to purchase the team. That's according to Steve Schott. That's in his book. That's not me just coming. That's according to Steve Schott. So Schott said, of course I would have freaking taken $25 million more, but he was already in process. So yes, while it is true, Jackson came to make an offer. He didn't even have the opportunity to buy that. He could have offered $1 billion and couldn't have purchased the home team.
Okay,
it wasn't his option.
The story is that there were bids out on the team, 1. 2, simultaneously as all this is happening and payroll has been cut for a substantial amount of time, the A's had a not competitive team, followed by a competitive team, followed by a not competitive team, followed by a competitive team. But all amongst this, the stars are being sold off. That's not debatable, right? A lot of the stars here have been raised here in the farm system and then sold off for prospects. So simultaneously, you have 2 things. There's an attachment to the organization because the fan base can't become familiar with the players. You also have a stadium that's become decrepit because when the Raiders came back, they put Mount Davis on the stadium because they wanted more suites. They wanted more suites to drive more revenue. Okay? So they put Mount Davis on the stadium. So you have this big atrocity. It doesn't look good. It blocks the view, culture, right? But okay, Raiders fans fill the stadium because football rules all, right? But it ruins the baseball aesthetic. So now it looks like you have less people because, quite honestly, like it's what, 15%, 20% bigger than most baseball stadiums. Most baseball stadiums are about 32,000. With Mount Davis, it was about 54,000.
I'm not disputing the fact that Mount Davis absolutely ruined.
Well, my point is that it adds to what it looks like on TV. That's why the tarping ended up happening later because they're like, we have to isolate this. We can't show this on TV. No one's going to the games, yada, 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 so on and so forth. And so my point here is that when does it start? When does the critique start of ownership's investment into not only the on-field product, but also the stadium itself, right? It wasn't until Dave Cavill came later that they started to make even small improvement, put little clubs in the outfield areas, spots behind home plate. My point is that the stadium's overflowing in the bathrooms and the locker rooms. It's in an industrial part of town. It's easy to get to because of BART, but quite honestly, it's not safe. There's no bars around there. There's nothing. It's just a bad stadium in a bad part of town with players that you don't even know and can't support. And they don't even put enough into the team to like invest in. So my whole thing is like, it kind of makes sense that you have withdrawal from the fan base. And so if you like, think about this. I was just listening to something about the Red Sox and the fans were pissed off. I mean, they just had a great offseason, but like before this, the fans were pissed off because they were divesting from the team. And they were like, hey, look, the Red Sox aren't spending like the Yankees and you're one of the power teams in the league. You're one of the power teams in the league and you're not spending this new ownership group, la, 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 la. Fans are starting to not come, yada, 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 yada. My point is that if the culture is that if you don't invest in the team and you don't put a good product on the field or recognizable players, marquee players, if you don't put something out there that's sexy and easy to watch, people will turn you off. People will turn their back.
But it was never on though, KP. It was never on. They never drew. They drew 2-3 times in 57 years.
But how could they? That's kind of my point. You have a bad city, you have a bad stadium in a very bad part of town, and every time you get players that are worth it, you take them off. You don't invest in the team. So like the only players that you get that are good, you're not interacting in free agency, by the way. I want to be clear about that, Booney.
Yep,
never.
I agree.
It was insane.
Agree.
Eric Chavez was the only extended player from
he wasn't
all
even a
of
free
these
agent.
years.
Yeah.
didn't even offer Simeon an arbitrary contract, and it would have cost him nothing. He would have left. They would have got a draft pick in 2000. I forget what year that was. What, 2018? They drafted Kyler Murray. They knew he wasn't going to sign here, but they didn't want to pay the draft picks. My point is,
not
like,
disagreeing with you.
these aren't accidental. They're far more business savvy than they want you to believe. These are bad business practices in the idea of getting around investing. They were the only team that furloughed their minor league staff. Right? Like, there's bad business practices that have led them to not invest in their stadium, in the team, and in the city. And already in Vegas and Sacramento, you've seen them invest more time and commitment to fan experience, team, and all these things than you had seen in Oakland. And so my whole thing is not that, oh, will they stay? Will it fail? It's nothing that has to do with that. It's just like recognizing the actual story and why people would be upset. Yes, is there crime? Okay, but is the city singular in crime? That sounds like something that Vegas would want you to know. It's a terrible place to have a team. The Warriors were here for years. The Warriors were here for years.
Why did the Warriors stay?
You said what?
Why did the Warriors stay?
Money. They were bought by Lake Cup. They were bought by Lake Cup. I don't know if you knew this, but the Warriors are from San Francisco in the first place.
Of course I do.
Yeah, they played all over California, so that's not really all that crazy. That Lake Cup wanted to drive the price of the stadium up, and then the Raiders got a hell of a deal, like $750 million, new stadium and sponsorship from the casinos to go there. It's like you can't even fault them.
What was the second? You said sponsorship.
What?
If you're a business owner and you had an opportunity, forget about it. You don't even like baseball. You're not even a fan of any team, let's say.
Yeah.
And you had an opportunity. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, sounds like Fisher. Go ahead.
See, that's the issue, man. You guys have the hypocrisy is nutty, because if you had a business and you had an opportunity, you just said it. The reason why the Raiders went to Vegas was because of sponsorship. They got a hell of a deal. The same thing's going to happen to A's. I'm not defending the A's one way or the other, whether they should be going or not. I have said it and been clear about it. The A's have never wanted to stay in Oakland. Right. They have never wanted to stay in Oakland. And the city has not done everything they could to keep the A's.
But in what way, though? In all the things that needed to be cleared, and I had no idea there were this many clearances that were needed. I had no idea. But in all the things, the environmental report to be on the water, the Port of Oakland, the BDC, the Schnitzer Steel a law case. There was literally nothing that held up the process. So when people say they didn't do their part, they raised more money through grants than Vegas had allowed.
At the 25th hour they did. At the 25th hour they said, hey, here, we're all set.
All this stuff, no, everything had been cleared as day. I don't know if you know this, but the conversation stopped.
Thank you for making Locked On A's your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB. Baseball guru Sully brings a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every rumor and story throughout the off season. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts.